So I appreciate everyone coming out tonight. Welcome. This is a meeting to meet our friends at Frontier Communications. To learn a little bit about the project here in Northeast Buncombe. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tim Love. I work for Buncombe County, and I'm here to help. Yeah, that's a good joke. Yeah, come on. But would like to recognize a few folks in the room that you probably do know. Commissioner Terry Willis is here with us today. We also have Sarah Nichols here with us. Sarah from the and Sarah used to be on television, widely watched testimony before Congress, literal Congress, on behalf of Western North Carolina, Buncombe County, Atlantic Sky region. I think. Yeah. Really good. From Frontier, we have Allison Ellis, and Allison, you can clap for her. She's going to talk to us more today about the project. Just in terms of some logistics, we are live streaming this. It'll be on our Buncombe County YouTube station. Purpose is really for Allison to share details about the project, give you a sense of who's going to be impacted at a household level. Also talk about the timeline. I know, fast enough is never fast enough, but we'll put the pressure on Allison. I would encourage y'all as well. I know that y'all know Frontier has a presence in Buncombe County and in Northeast Buncombe, and the reputation, candidly, not great. Technology, not what we would hope to use in the current day and age. DSL is an older technology. But what Allison's here to talk to you about today is not DSL. She's going to be talking about fiber to the home, which is kind of the best in the breed for what we've got. We talk about it as being future-proof, and so I think it's going to be a really good product. Looking forward to hearing more about it. Before we leave, I'd like to do kind of a quick poll. I want to know how you found out about this today. I've kind of been fielding some of y'all, so if you just raise your hand. If you got a text message from Buncombe County, please raise your hand. We got 4 people. Okay, who got like an email sent through a neighborhood or a friend? A lot of emails. That's good.
Well, we got an email from Weaverville's.
Yes, that's perfect. Like, give a good sense. So before we leave, everyone in this room, all 30 of you, you're going to sign up for Buncombe County text alerts if you're willing.
Yes.
And this is a way for us to share information with you on real time. For a meeting like today, not a huge deal, but if there was something urgent, flood warning, bridges closed, something like that, that'd be really good information. Additionally, if you'd like to stay in touch with us moving forward, we'll set up a sign-up sheet. You can leave an email address, and we'll get in touch with you. Does that sound good? Yes. I'm going to stop talking. Allison, do your thing. So, Allison, do.
Thank you, Tim. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Commissioner Wells, for joining us today. Thank you all for having me here in Buncombe County and to partnering with us to bring broadband connectivity to our community. What I thought I'd do is sort of start with where Frontier has been, where we are going, and then we can talk a little bit about the specifics of the projects that the project that we have funded with. I want to do my own slides, so if you don't mind, I'll sit. But if you want me to stand, you can't see me. I can also stand. But okay, as Jim said, we have been a provider in the community for a long time. We are a traditional telephone company and began the evolution to broadband. We originally started that through DSL technology, which is a copper-based technology that leverages our voice transmission lines. And when we were first delivering broadband service through copper facilities, DSL, people were pretty happy because at the time, the things that you were doing on the internet weren't really capacity intensive applications. They were things like emails, maybe some modest web surfing, online banking. Those things don't take up a lot of bandwidth. What happened is that very quickly, the applications and people's use of broadband just exploded. And we as a company, like many other companies, were not able to keep up with the investment required to enhance our networks and deliver better broadband over DSL technology. One thing that I didn't mention, which was really important, is that DSL is distance sensitive. So if you are close to a point of aggregation, nearer into town, you probably got okay service. But the further you went out of town, the more the signal degrades. That's just physics. And so it's very hard to augment that network to continue to deliver higher and higher speed capabilities. So, this is a very expensive, capital-intensive industry. And Frontier found itself in a situation where it just did not have the financial fitness, money to invest in enhancing the network. So we went through something called a negotiated restructuring, which we completed in May of 2020. It's a fancy way of saying we went through a bankruptcy, but on friendly terms with the creditors. This was actually really positive. I mean, you laugh, but it was actually really positive for the company for a number of big reasons. First and foremost is we eliminated $10 billion worth of debt. That was on our balance sheet. It was preventing us from being able to borrow more money to invest in the community to upgrade our network. So that was, principal achievement. The second principal achievement is that we emerged from that process as an entirely new company. We have an entirely new board of directors, an entirely new senior leadership team, and they are, I've worked for the company since 2010, most sophisticated management that we've ever had at the company. So it's a really exciting time to be part of Frontier. The third principal thing that happened from that is we have a very clear strategy for the company going forward, which is called Building Gigabit America. This is our initiative to build fiber to the premises to as many locations as possible, as quickly as possible. We'll talk a little bit more about why fiber is so important, but one thing I would just say about the strategic plan is it's intensely data driven. It was intensely vetted. It had to be approved by our creditors who, exchanged their debt or shares in the new company. It had to be approved by the bankruptcy court under the standard that the company has a plan that is not likely to lead it into future financial difficulty. So it's very well vetted by third parties. And we've been acting, putting it into action. So when I say that we're committed to building Gigabit America, the new management came in and basically rebuilt our management team. We have experts in the industry from all over, whether it's finance, engineering, construction, customer service. We really are led by operational excellence. Just to give you a sample of this, our principal engineer, the person who is responsible for overseeing this major fiber expansion, came to us from AT&T, where she led their fiber expansion. So her name is Veronica Bloodworth, very well respected in the industry, and just gives you a sense of really bringing the highest quality expert personnel into the organization. We also have, really focused on being fiscally responsible, right? We are a company that has learned a very hard lesson, and we do not want to find ourselves in that situation before. So when you look at what our financial balance sheet looks like, it's very healthy. We have $1.9 billion worth of liquidity. We also, it's not on this slide, but about 2 weeks ago, we completed a securitization of some of our assets in Texas, which opened up another $2 billion. One thing I guess I didn't mention is part of this building Gigabit America is this overarching goal to connect 10 million locations with fiber, past 10 million locations with fiber by the end of 2025. We started that in 2021, we're more than halfway there. This was all expansion that was intended to be totally self-financed. So, and this goal was announced prior to there being a lot of state or federal funding for broadband expansion. And so we see this moment in time as a really unique opportunity to combine our own independent investment with some public subsidy, public investment in order to reach those locations that remain unserved or underserved today because they're difficult to reach, they are expensive, and it's hard for companies to independently fund the expansion to those locations. The other thing, and when I say, we have at this point in the company a fiber deployment machine. So we started in more densely populated communities where we wanted to really test our processes and procedures, learn our lessons under what would be the most favorable conditions where is a lot of density, so that we could optimize our entire approach. And when we got into a community more like Buncombe, where it's the homes aren't as densely organized, there's more topology, other issues, that we would be able to handle those very easily. We have built fiber, as I said, last year, more than 1.3 million locations. In Q2, 316,000 locations. Just to give you a sense, if you look at companies that are much, much larger than us, AT&T, Verizon, we're building at the same pace or at a greater pace if you're looking at Verizon. Customer centricity. So, Tim very honestly and forthrightly acknowledged that, we have some reputational issues. We are very clear-eyed about that. We understand that people's experience with our technology, particularly over time, has not been as positive as we would like it to be. Fiber is absolutely the fix to that. It's not the only fix, right? Fiber is the technology that is going to deliver you the premium level of experience of anyone, anywhere. But it also has to be backed by a team that is really dedicated to customer service and is supported by systems and processes that are intended to make, your doing business with us really easy. We've made a lot of changes in our customer care organization in order to achieve this. And one of the things I wanted to point out is all companies measure what they call the NPS score. This is essentially like, how pleased are you with the company? How likely are you to recommend them to your friends and family? In telecom, they're historically terrible. And we all understand this intuitively because when you have a connectivity issue, you feel it very viscerally. It never happens at a good time. It always happens when there's an emergency or your daughter's getting married or, somebody has had an accident. I mean, it's always, you're on a deadline. It's never at a good time. And people, when they form that negative opinion, it's very hard to break that open. If you look at how we've done on our NPS score, we have raised it 40 points since 2021, and that is unheard of. We have gone into communities where, people have been really unhappy with the level of service. When we fiberize it, it takes 60 days and all of a sudden people are, hey, this is the best thing. This is the greatest company. So glad that they came here and did this for our community. We know you will have the same experience, but it's going to take a little bit of time getting there. I also wanted to point out that we were ranked #1 for the fastest internet upload speeds in the US by an independent third party called Ookla. We're super proud of that because one of the reasons that traditional technologies are underperforming today is because more and more applications need a very fast, robust upload speed to work well. So historically, we all were like, how quickly can I get my, Netflix? How quickly can I get, my photographs or whatever downloaded onto my computer? What the pandemic really made clear for everyone is that in order to have these really rich interactive experiences, to be able to do Zoom and Teams and WebExes, telehealth services, you have to have a very interactive experience. That's what a fast upload speed gives you, and all of our services have the same upload and download speed. So they're called symmetrical, you get exactly the same. So if you don't know very much about fiber, what I would just say is fiber is the best technology that's out there. It provides the richest internet experience, highest speed capabilities. It's super reliable. And then it's also what we call future-proof. I'll address each of these in turn. So super high speed. We were the first company in the nation to introduce 2 gigabit symmetrical service. We did that on 2/2/22 for the synergy there. But then we followed it up very quickly, less than a year later, with 5G symmetrical. So this is 2,000 megabits up, 2,000 megabits down. If you're on copper, you might be looking at 10-1 service. So it's magnitude. Today, you don't have a lot of customers who need 5 gigabit symmetrical. Maybe if you're doing something like video editing or AutoCAD or something super data intensive. But this was really Frontier wanting to communicate to our customers, communities, that we are building the connectivity, not that you need today or that you needed yesterday, but what you need for tomorrow and well into the future. In terms of better performance, so this is another key difference with fiber than DSL. DSL is line connected, and it has to have an electrical charge all the way through the transmission path. Multiple points of aggregation, multiple points of failure. In more rural communities where you have commercial power interruptions, like that's a big problem with copper, right? Because if there's a commercial power outage, you don't have connectivity. With fiber, it's a passive technology, which means you only need power at either end of the connection. So power at our central office, which is backed up with, terrific battery backup, diesel generators, all those kind of things. And then power at your connection. And if you have power at either end, you're going to have connectivity. So it eliminates all of those multiple points of failure that a traditional DSL network has. When we look at our network performance across our entire network, it has a 99.97% reliability that equates to an aggregate of 2.5 down hours per year. So, not all at one time, that's aggregate. Very, very reliable. Then the future-proof component of it is once we come in and we lay fiber, whether we are attaching it to aerial infrastructure or we're putting it underground, that's all we need to do. When the time comes that people need higher speeds beyond the 5 gig, the current network is immediately capable of 10 gigs, right? But down the road, we'll need more than that. And so we can augment that with additional technologies, additional electronics, but we're not going to have to come back into the community and lay a whole infrastructure again. This is going to be decades into the future. The physics of fiber and being able to use the different frequencies of light really is a huge advantage that's going to ensure that we get maximum connectivity for us all. We all know the great things that fiber brings to a community. There's obviously quality of life, better access to telehealth services, remote work opportunities, educational opportunities. But it also has sort of this virtuous benefit for the entire community in terms of economic development, higher property values. I can tell you there are a lot of people that I hear from anecdotally who are looking for houses and they say, oh, it doesn't have fiber, it's off the list, I can't even consider it. Either because of remote working or, they just want to make sure that they've got now what they're going to need into the future. And then, of course, stronger tax base, better engagement with your community leaders, and all of those good things that come in that. So when you look at how Frontier approaches its products and pricing, I did want to point this out because I think it's really important. We set our prices at a national. We operate in 25 states. We're largely in more suburban and rural communities like Broadband County. If you think one of our most metropolitan areas is Tampa, Florida, so it gives you kind of a sense. We're usually like around the big city, Dallas, not necessarily in Dallas. So we look at our pricing and we do it on a national basis. And so in this community, you will get the benefit of a community that has super high competition in terms of, trying to win the customer. And so our flagship offers what we call our big symmetrical internet. This is available at $69.99 per month. We don't require you to sign a contract because we don't think we need to. Once you have the service, you're going to find that it's superior to anything else and you're not going to leave us. We include a router in that. People have, when we surveyed our customers, they told us that they wanted to have a better in-home Wi-Fi experience. So we worked with Amazon to bring the Eero Pro 6 router into our product portfolio. There's actually now a Pro 7 router, but it uses the latest technology in order to give you a very robust, very comprehensive coverage in your house. Of course, if you have like a really big house, or maybe you want to kind of extend out and try to get the barn covered as well, we have extenders that can propagate the signal as well. And then, we have multiple different service tiers. We actually, right now, this gig service offer is customers can sign up for $10 less than that, so for $59.99. I just mentioned that because, again, these are nationally set, they're competitive rates, and so they fluctuate over time. If you look at how a gig was priced, even just 24 months ago, people were paying well in excess of $200 per gig. So at $69.99, that's a super competitive price. I said we went up to 5 gigs symmetrical. That's still like $159 or $57, something like that. So, not huge. 2 gig is $99, and then our other service tier is 500 over 500, which is $49.99. We also participate in the Affordable Connectivity Program. This is a federal program that provides a benefit of $30 to income eligible houses to help them afford broadband service. I wanted to mention this because the way that the federal government drew the eligibility benchmark, it's you qualify if you're within 200% of the federal poverty guideline. So actually, like 40% of the nation qualify for this. We don't have 40% of our customer base signed up for it because people are using it for mobile connectivity as well. And there obviously is a place for mobile connectivity, but it does not provide the same benefits in the household that a wireless connection does. So, we encourage people to utilize it for wired service. And I think that's what the FCC is really hoping as well. But I point out that our free, so $0 for the customer with a $30 benefit, is 100 over 100 service. So our cable competitors are typically offering their free tier at about 120. We really wanted to make sure that income eligible households were getting really robust, positive internet experience. And that level of connectivity will allow multiple users doing interactive activities all at the same time in a household. So you could have somebody, doing an online class, you could have somebody doing a Zoom, you could have somebody gaming, and you're not going to notice that multiple people are using it. Nobody's going to be bringing upstairs, get off the internet, I need to download my product. Which I know how to do. Okay, so when we look at Buncombe County, so I wanted to, I should have probably put this in context, but if you look up in the upper right, that's our footprint in North Carolina. The dark blue is where we have service, or service territory. We actually have a pretty small footprint in North Carolina. I know it's super tiny, but if you can see right up there, we have a pretty small footprint actually in North Carolina. But because we're a traditional LAC, our network is organized according to something called wire centers. And I don't know who drew these way back in the day, but they look like camouflage. They don't follow municipal boundaries. They don't follow county boundaries. They don't follow physical structure, physical features like rivers. I don't know who drew them, but they're all very odd shaped and they intersect. So when you look at Buncombe County and you see the shape of the county, right, the purple, like that shaded green area right in the top corner where we are now, that's the only part of the county that we actually have now. All the rest is served by someone else. So
Who doesn't want to serve us? But then they can't because we don't have fiber.
yeah, I mean, we would love to serve the entire county. Let's be clear. We would love to serve the entire county. One of the reasons that we were funded as through the Great Grant Program for this community is first and foremost our partnership with your community leaders. Like that is a determinative factor when the broadband office is deciding which projects to fund and where to allocate the state the money, right? So there's state money, there's federal money, but that's really what they're looking at because they only want to fund projects that they know are going to be successful. And construction is disruptive, and we do our best to try to minimize that for our community, but there's going to be disruption, right? And so they want to know that the community is behind it so that the project can go through in as streamlined a fashion as possible and get complete. So, okay, so back to one of the reasons, the second reason, first reason was, community support and collaboration. The second reason is because we have existing infrastructure in the green area, we can leverage that in our grant application. The broadband office is trying to spread the money as broadly as possible. And so they're looking for the most economical projects, obviously. this we can leverage our existing infrastructure, and so we're able to put in a proposal that is more competitive than other companies. That's much harder for us to do in the much broader area of the county where we have no infrastructure. We can certainly build out infrastructure, and we do look to do projects and expand our footprint, but it just becomes more expensive. And so sometimes it's really hard for us to put a grant together that's competitive when you're looking at a grant from the existing service provider who has all of the poles and easements and the right-of-way access that is needed to complete the project.
Can you clarify for me then? Mostly you're gonna just be working in the green shaded area. And how do we find out? Because I'm either in it or just to the right of it.
I'll show you. So I have an address list, okay? The address list is public. It's part of our grant. I'm happy to, I think I might have provided it to you, but I'm happy to provide it again so that it can be posted. And you can go up and you can look at your address, right? And those are the locations that the grant office has provided money to connect. There is a possibility that other locations in and around those will get connected as part of a broader project, right? Like if our crews are going down the street and they have to go to the end of the block and there's, you know, another one right there, they may use that kind of in-field decision-making to bring in another household. But it's hard for me to say today, like if you're the house to the left, you're absolutely gonna get it as well, right? I can only speak to what the grant.
So right now we have River Street, and because we're closer to Barnardsville, and I've been on them since 2017 when they promised fiber in 2017. And I've called other internet companies and they say, no, sorry, we can't, Charter, we get things in the mail, Charter will, great fast internet. So I call again. Yes, if you want it, it'll cost you $26,000 to run it across the hill, because our neighbors across the hill have it. But so am I hearing that? I think you were saying the lines were drawn and there's a River Street doesn't go into Frontier area and Frontier.
Well, cable is a little bit different because the cable, so we were traditionally a telecom company way back. All telecom companies were monopolies, right? And then it was broken up, and so we're different than a cable company. Cable companies came in and they got permission from the city to expand their network, typically a franchise agreement. And so the city at the time that they gave the franchise agreement set forth the criteria of build out. And some cities said you got to build out to everybody. Some cities said you build wherever you want. I mean, it just was part of that, really was happening in the 80s and 90s. So, if Charter doesn't want to come to you, it's likely because it's expensive and, they don't have existing facilities there. I will tell you, if you are concerned about your address and your ability to get certain levels of service, you should make sure that your address is properly reflected as unserved or underserved. We can share a link, but the FCC is gathering this information.
I filled that out. Yes.
Okay, yeah. And then the state is also going to undertake its own exercise, probably early to mid next year, to ensure that it's properly identified all of the unserved and underserved locations that are being mentioned. Okay, so when we look at the GREAT grant, so the Growing Rural Economic with Access to Technology grant, this is the first sort of tranche of the North Carolina funding. So this is a plot out of the addresses, where they're located, and which ones are part of the project. So if you look at their almost 1,000 locations, 964. The total grant was $3.3 million. The county contributed about $300,000. Frontier is contributing about $300,000. So the total project cost is a little bit under $4 million. This is, pretty typical, I guess I would say, of the grants that the broadband office funded, right? Is they wanted to ensure they got a density, a number of locations, and that they were also seeing applications where both the community and the company like Frontier was putting in coverage.
What is each, I'm sorry, is each blackout a house or just a location?
It's a serviceable location, so it could be a house or it could be a business.
Or it could be a neighborhood?
Well, a neighborhood would probably look more like that.
We got 135 houses in our neighborhood. I don't see any 135 dot clusters there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, I guess what I would say is it's a close approximation, but so when we look at project timeline, this grant has to be completed in 24 months, right? And, just to expectation set, projects take that. If the hope is that the project is going to get done 6 months from now, that's not going to happen.
That's 24 months from now.
It's 24 months from when the grant was effective. And so the grant was effective in May 3rd of 2023. Perfect. So 24 months from then. But I wanted to kind of give you a sense of what the project timeline looks like and where we are in the project. So what happens is the state will announce the grant award. And then it takes a while, and in this instance, it took a long time, for the state to actually get all of the legal grant agreement documents together, to get them executed by Frontier, executed by the county. So that took a little bit of time. And then, from that point, we have contract execution, which is May 3rd. And we start with, really initiating the process, right? Looking at what various elements of the project are going to be, identifying priority areas of the project, and just really getting the project started in our process. It then moves on to the second phase, which is the detailed design phase. So that's where we are right now. This takes anywhere from 30 to 240 days. It is sometimes done, the design is sometimes done in phases. And so that's why, and sometimes it has to change over time. And so that's why there's kind of a large window for it, or a long window for it. But this is really where if we have to do environmental reviews, where we do the really detailed design of the network and engineering of the network. When we do the grant application, it's kind of like a high level design. And then this is the next level down where there are actually like field surveys and, really detailed engineering. And then, also we begin the process of doing make-ready work, things like that. Anything that we need to do in order to make it so that when we come in with the fiber, that we can attach it to the poles or, access the underground. This also is where we spec out everything we need to complete the project. So what we know is that internet infrastructure, equipment, materials is very high demand right now. I mean, it was in high demand at the start of the pandemic. The pandemic had supply chain implications, and you now also have a lot of state and federal money across, the nation dedicated to broadband. So there's sort of like an intense competition for materials, fiber, that sort of thing. We have spent, the last 18 months diversifying and reinforcing our supply chain. We feel very good about our access to materials, manpower, fiber, equipment. But, it is one of those things that has a very long lead time. So when I say we create our bill of materials and order and, process the orders, that's like, because it takes a long time to get that equipment fulfilled by the manufacturers, whether that's, Corning or Nokia or someone else. We can't just go and, buy everything we need off the shelf. It's actually more like made for us. We have good relationships with all of our vendors, so we feel good about this. But I just wanted to flag it because we do know as hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars get dedicated to broadband, it's going to create an issue. And so far, not for us, but we're keeping our fingers crossed. So after that, major part of that second phase is completed, we move on to the construction phase. And the construction phase is when you'll start to see people in your community. So typically what we do is we will let, we filed our permits, the permits have gone through the process, we get the, okay to proceed. And, you know, we will utilize Tim and other community resources in order to alert you all when construction is coming closer. We typically do like door hangers in communities to let people know construction is gonna happen. This is when the people are gonna be in your neighborhood. As I said, we try to really minimize the impact that it has on you. You know, we try to minimize any kind of road closures or, you know, anything that needs to happen. Yeah, well, okay, you'd actually be surprised. You'd actually be surprised. So I think the door hangers,
Yeah, we'll be celebrating.
I will tell you with the door hangers, we actually have revised them. I personally have revised them, I think like 4 times at this point. Because one of the things that it's hard for people to understand, and maybe they know it, but they haven't thought about it in a long time, is like the very first 10 feet of your yard that you have been mowing and, you know, caring for religiously for the last 30 years, that's actually the easement, right? And so we will go into that area and to lay the fiber. And so, you know, sometimes that means your yard gets messed up or even some of your landscaping gets messed up. And the crew that is doing the deployment, like the construction, is not the same crew that fixes that. It is oftentimes several weeks later, sometimes even as long as a month, before the landscape crew comes back and fixes everything. We have made a pledge to our customers and our communities that we will fix it and we will put it back as good or better. But there is a lead, you know, there is a delay because you bring the fiber into your community. We have to make sure that it's tested, it works, and it's interconnected properly. Because the last thing we want to do is come in, fix your yard, and then have to come back and rip it up again to, you know, change something. So that process requires a lot of patience, particularly for those people who, you know, have a lot of pride about the way their front yard looks. I appreciate that. My husband loves to have it look perfect, but you know, there will be a period of time where it doesn't look great. And then, so when we talk about network activation, I will say that the last 3 project phases are very fluid in the sense that once we have constructed something and we've we've tested it and we've activated the network, those locations become open for sale. It's not like 24 months, it's the end of the 24 months before the first person will see the connectivity, the ability to order service. It happens in a fluid basis. So there will be, unfortunately, someone who's the last one to be turned up, but everyone else will have been turned up on a rolling basis before that person. And so, you know, again, network activation is things like testing our network, making sure that everything is working right. You know, starting to do customer installations. Typically, when you call and order service, you know, we can get somebody out to deploy service within 10 days. All of the new fiber locations will all need special equipment at the house. So when we talk about running fiber, you know, we run it past the house. We actually will not go on your property to do what we call the drop, which is the connectivity from the curb into your home until you order service from us.
Excuse me.
No, there's typically not an additional cost. I mean, if there's some very unusual circumstance, like, I don't know, maybe you have to go over the river and through the woods and, you know, something like that, maybe, but we haven't really encountered that much. We provide service in, just to give you some comfort, in a lot of places that are very like this. In fact, we serve the entire state of West Virginia. It's the only state, well, it's only 1 of 2 states where we serve the entire state. So again, an environment very similar to this, a lot of mountains and streams and, you know, valleys and beautiful country with beautiful trees that do make the climate a little bit. But in any event, when you order service, we will do the drop from the street to your house. We will install something called an OMT on the outside of your house. That's what gives you the Connect Fiber connectivity. And then you will have a router inside your home. That router is what will give you your voice service. It's what will give you your broadband service and then also your voice service, right? Your voice becomes an application on broadband connection, just as your TV. We have a special relationship with YouTube TV, very similar to your traditional kind of linear television cable type experience, where you get a reduction on your subscription, monthly subscription of YouTube, order it through us. I actually started to use it this year. It's got a lot of really cool features, especially if you're like a sports person. Or you get interrupted and you want to go back to where you started it. So those then, and of course you can off the shelf buy whatever video service you want, whether it's Netflix or Amazon or whatever. All of those can work simultaneously on the connection.
Can I ask a question? How deep is the cut to put the cable in the ground?
So for the drop to your house, not all that deep.
I can make this.
Oh, maybe 10 inches. Oh, yeah. So it still has to be marked, right? All of our stuff has to be marked, and that is one of the things where we have seen a little bit of a friction, right? Because we need a lot of people to be doing this. We're not the only people who are constructing, right? The infrastructure bill is about much more than just broadband. So you probably have other projects going on, whether it's road work or bridge work or sewer work, or, in all of those locations, all of those projects need to have locations marked, right? Like the utility locations marked. But we just found in some communities that actually can be something that introduces a little bit of delay in a project, because the locators are trying to manage all of the different requests that they're getting simultaneously.
I'm asking because my yard is like a giant rock. It's incredible. And when they put my power pole in, they finally gave up on the last 1.5 and just built up this rock around the bottom of my pole.
So in your instance, you might have an aerial drop, right? So it wouldn't be buried if it can't be buried, right? It would be aerial to your house, which is probably how your electricity is. Yeah. We just ride the same connection.
Okay. Good to know.
A little bit lower. You don't have the electricity. Okay, so this, I know everybody wants to know, when is my house getting connected? And I know everybody wants the exact date, and I apologize that I cannot give that to you. Especially at this point in time. And this is going to be, you have this to be posted up on your website, Jim, so everybody can have access to this. But I wanted to share with you directionally some information so that I could give you some sense of, what to expect. So these are the likely way that the project will proceed in project phases. So phase 1, which is the green one, has quite a large number of locations in it, and it's actually where we have a central office. So that sort of makes sense to go there first, and then we build out from there. Phase 2 is this darker purple to the left. Phase 3 is brown. Phase 4 is blue at the top, and phase 5 is now. Sorry. I'm going back.
Neither Bill's right in the center, so you point to leader.
Within Stony Knob.
Oh,
Okay.
real creek up there.
Pleasant Grove. Okay.
That's where we are.
Beach, Blackberry Inn. Okay. Flat Creek. And all the way up to Queens Ivy.
Oh, that's all.
That's very.
Can you show where Oxford Road is, please?
That one you said. I did a big plan.
That's the last group that lights.
Now, again, I can't tell you today what date for any of these locations. I was trying to give you a sense. That's not to say that it's going to, when construction starts, start exactly like this, but that's what the engineers are telling me at this point. There could be changes in there, but again, I just wanted to give you all kind of a sense of how the project is likely to unfold.
Excuse me, what are the yellow dots? It says CO.
Oh, that's our central office.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. just a point of, so remember when I said we're organized in wire centers, every wire center has these ones.
And excuse me, and you did say though that as this is phasing out, we will get information either through Buncombe County, through, on our bill that we all pay.
Yeah.
If we still have Frontier something that lets us know kind of what's going on.
Yeah, probably not on your bill, but we will have community communication, and also kind of in advance of when we expect the construction to really start taking place and service becoming open for sale in the relatively near term. We'll start sending out things to the community, things like direct mail pieces, you may see advertising in the community, things to start alerting people to the fact that fiber is coming. And then,
Can I
sorry.
ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So what happens if you run out of money now, basis on? It's fine.
Well, we're under contract with the state to perform. We're committed. And I will say, and I'll go back to the project financials and just say, the vast majority of the funding is coming from the state. So in terms of running out of money, there's, the majority of the money is coming from the state, and that's money that they already have. It's not like they have to allocate it through the legislative process.
I'm just concerned with all the difficulties of construction. Spending,
Yeah.
spend all 320.
Well, we're under contract. There are remedies in the contract. Should we, underperform? I don't expect that to happen. That's not our plan. We want to connect every single household. We want to connect more than what's in this, funded grants. And we want y'all to become customers. So. I did want to also just maybe flag for you all, as I did with the commissioner earlier today. In terms of the grant funding for the community, what the great grant awarded, it's just like the first tranche of money. There's a lot more money coming to the community. So the state still has $400 million that they are awarding to broadband expansion. After that, there's $90 million. And then after that, there is what is known as BEAD. This is the big pool of money in the IIJA federal piece of legislation, $42 billion. And North Carolina was allocated $1.5 billion. That's a lot of money. It actually puts North Carolina at kind of the top of the list in terms of funding. If you think about Texas got more funding than everybody, and they got over $3 billion. And then there was a smaller cohort that got between like 1.5 and 900 million, and then down. So you're actually in that cohort that got quite a lot of money. According to the current data from the FCC, that's because there's a lot of connectivity still needed within the state, 500,000 locations that are either unserved or underserved. So unserved means if the household cannot get 25 megabits up, 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up. And underserved means that they can't get 100 down and 20 up. In Buncombe County, there are 6,300 of those locations. In our footprint, there's another 750. We will certainly be, continuing our conversations with the community about ways that we can partner to expand connectivity to those locations and beyond those locations. But there also will be a lot of additional money for the community to compete for in order to bring connectivity more broad. And we certainly have, Frontier is only doing fiber. It's the premier technology. It gives you the best experience. You will be in more rural North Carolina, and you will get better connectivity than people who live in New York City. So it's fantastic. And it's the opportunity to get fiber to as many people as possible. Yeah.
With these numbers up there and with the unserved and underserved being the keynote, is it fair for me to assume that if we've got Spectrum cable in our neighborhood, you're not coming in our neighborhood right now?
Not right.
Okay.
right now, because you will be considered served.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
I mean, our hope is, that we, our services really take, consumers will adopt our services and that,
Signing up for it.
yeah. That funds our ability to expand further, right? I mean, we want to grow, we want as many customers as we possibly can. There is a lot of need, and so, we can't do every year and one all at once, but we really are trying to go as quickly as we can.
I'd rather see people who don't have it.
Thank you.
Definitely does not have broadband.
Okay, so then you may be a household that's,
People in our area, it's not, the only way you can get internet is through Spectrum. And it's not 5G, right, it's just regular, it's not fiber optic. So when you go to sign up for somebody like T-Mobile or somebody or something else, it's not available in our. Because we have cable, but we don't have 5G, so there's a big difference between these things.
Well, that's how we are with Frontier.
Yeah.
We use Frontier services. We used to use it for our satellite movies, but we never picked it over 0.3 megabyte up and down, 0.3.
So if you have cable and you don't have broadband, then you're underserved.
well, so the definition at the federal level is if you can't get 100/20, then you are underserved. So if you can't order that from Spectrum, then your address should be on the broadband map. If you have Spectrum, you probably can get that. That's the problem. And Spectrum is not investing in fiber expansion to the same extent that in Frontier.
And Spectrum's charging people $900 a month to do that, and it's just insane.
Yeah, so
How did you, I just found out we're unserved rather than underserved because our internet is so slow. How did you know there's 5,110 underserved in Buncombe County?
this is all from federal data. So all providers have to report every address that they can serve and every maximum speed tier that address can get.
Okay,
And that's a huge data exercise that's been underway for really probably about 2 years at this point. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done, which is why I encourage everybody to go onto the FCC site and make sure your address is there correctly and make sure that your availability is correctly reflected, because not only did they change what they required of companies to provide, but they also sort of changed what they call the fabric, which is the whole map of every address in the nation. That sounds like a really simple thing, but I can tell you that there are like 19 different ways to say 101 Main Street, apartment A. And so every database has a different, every provider, the US Postal Service, UPS, everybody has a different. And so part of this initiative at the FCC is to try to get a one sort of golden source of address information.
So what website do you go to find out?
It's the FCC, and we'll provide you a list, but even if you just Google BDC mapping, it would take you straight. It's the federal government, so they have to have some acronym, but it's called the Broadband Data Collection Initiative.
And before we wrap up, and I let anyone out of this room, I've got some slides. I'm going to show you some websites where you can get more information and some other things we talked about. So that's. Yeah.
And this is, not news to you, but again, this gives you a sense of the distribution, right? So there's the yellow are the locations that are subject to the great grant that I'm here talking about today. All of the other green plots are the additional grant eligible locations within Buncombe County. And then I thought this would be interesting for you. This is all things that you know, though. This is sort of a heat map based on what the BBC says, what other providers have reported as the level of service connectivity that you can get within the community. Then the last thing I just wanted to share is, again, Tim can put this on the website. You're welcome to go to this link. You can enter your address. You can check their availability. If we don't have service available, it also will capture that you're interested in serving, right? So that for future updates and service availability, you can get notifications. But that's something also that you can just, anyone can use. So that's all I had for my official comments. I, hope that it was informative for you all. Thank you. I did just want to say once again, thank you so much to your community leaders. They have been just instrumental in this. We really do want to continue to work together, bring more money into your communities so that you get all of the good things that fire brings. And so thank you very much for your support, and we'll work to continue to keep you up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Alvin is gonna hang out with us for a little bit, if anyone wants to sort of linger, we can talk a little bit more, give specific questions. I've got a few slides, I'm up real quick with some web addresses, so everybody should get out their phones so we can take pictures.
What's your role with the county?
So I am our Director of Economic Development and Governmental Relations.
In the English language?
I try to fix problems. One of the problems.
That's good.
What do you think, Commissioner? Does that work?
Great.
So one of the problems we have is broadband in our community, and so I've been working on that with Sarah and many others. And this is one of our, we had 3 great grant projects. First was in Sandy Mush about 3 years ago. This is the second for the Northeast. And our third project will hit a little bit of the Ox Creek folks. There's a little niche that isn't included on your map. So you're pretty good one.
Okay.
But that's a joke. But
No, I'd say competition is good.
competition is good. And then Fairview, of course, as well. We're currently going through a whole new phase. We're working with the state to do kind of an RFP for all sorts of locations, and more information to come. But what we need from y'all is to hear from you. And so this is our public input page for this particular project. And so the web address is right at the top, engage.buncombecounty.org. I apologize that the naming convention isn't that straightforward, but take a picture of that. When you go to this website, you're going to see a tab here that says expansion information. That's where you'll be able to go to see Allison's map specifically, as well as kind of the timeline, things like that. Additionally, if there's any public meetings that we're working on, those will be there. We got some FAQs, and then a link to the broadband survey. Who's done the broadband survey? Raise your hand. If you've not done the broadband survey, you're doing all this disservice, in particular yourself. The way that we know that you're unserved or underserved is when you tell us. And so the way that you do that is by submitting the broadband survey. If you're kind of a joker, like most people are when I talk about this, they say, well, how am I going to do the broadband survey if I don't have internet activity? Which is a great question. And when you click on this link, there's going to be a telephone number that you can call if you don't have access. So please do this, tell your friends. That cluster of like dots that you asked about, we don't know you're out there unserved unless you tell us. You gotta tell us. And so please tell all your friends to submit that survey response. So this is the engage.com site. Please go here for more information. That's where you'll find everything from today.
I understand that Ox Creek is not on this grant.
Ox Creek is. Just by the full Ox Creek is not. There's a portion that isn't. That's in the grant. We can talk. Everybody got a picture of the public input site?
Can you put it in full screen? No.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There it is. And a QR code next time we do this. We know how to do that unless somebody knows how to take a picture. Think about that. All right, so next up, this has nothing to do with broadband, everything to do about us communicating with you. So Buncombe County Alerts, it's also called Code Red. You can sign up by going to our web page. That's the address at the top. If you have it, great. If you don't, you should get it. You would have heard about this meeting, text message,
That's probably how I. Pay attention.
as long as we reach you.
I just cut and pasted and talked out.
That's all good. Somebody asked me a question about open burning. Right at the top, it's very clear, open burning is allowed, so that it isn't, it's.
How that's related to this project is the interesting part.
Yes.
We have to have internet.
That's. So. And then what I'll do is I'll give y'all my email address. Well, look official.
While you're doing that, you mentioned, you had a question about T-Mobile, you mentioned that, I guess they wanted to mention. So when you have mobile service, which we all know, it's a way it is, it's not all that consistent. But when you have mobile service, if you have Wi-Fi at your house, your mobile phone is using your home Wi-Fi from the moment you get close to your house. Mobile signals are brought down into wired signals as quickly as possible. So that's why when we go into Starbucks, it's now using the Starbucks Wi-Fi. So when you have fiber at your house and a better Wi-Fi connection, your mobile service is going to feel like it's working a lot better as well.
So when you call up T-Mobile, it says, oh, we're offering you internet service for $50. And you go into their website and you say, okay, I want to sign up. They come back and they say, this service is not available in your area.
Yeah.
Does that mean you don't have it?
That's a fixed wireless service that T-Mobile is offering to consumers, and that requires construction as well. So sometimes that's all over the air. Sometimes they've done the build out necessary for that in communities, and sometimes they haven't. Fixed wireless also doesn't work quite the same way in the sense that you're not getting a dedicated connection to your house. You're getting a signal availability, and so it's not like they can say limit it to only the houses on the street. You know what I mean? It's just how far the signal can reach.
So it's not the wireless that say is available. They say the internet connection is not.
Yeah,
It is wireless.
It is using a wireless signal. It's just using a different signal than regular mobile service.
It's not tower. So don't know if that means we're eligible or not.
No, fixed wireless does not. If you only have available at your house is fixed wireless, you're still considered uncertain.
You won't get it on.
This one, since I didn't want to affect us, I will ask this on behalf of everybody else. One of my big complaints with Spectrum and other companies we've been with is you get in whatever, $79, $69, $59 a month. 2 years later, it's $148. What's Frontier's? That's a great introductory price. That's less than we take for Spectrum for internet only, but how long would that kind of rate stay in, or is it going to be a year or two, you're at $125?
So that's the rate that we've been offering since we launched it in
Really?
2021.
That's great.
Yeah. So, the price pressure on broadband services has really brought prices down. We do price our products differently, right? And we just take a different strategy to the market. So it's kind of, we also think we offer better service. So, you're getting more for less. But it is a competitive industry, right? And so this is what's available today. Ultimately, when your house is turned up, there will be service tiers that you can choose from when your house is turned up. So right now we have 500, 1 gig, 2 gig, 5 gig. Down the road, you may have something higher. But you'll have multiple tiers to choose from, and so you have a bit of control over how much of your, family budget you dedicate to.
I've always thought that my Verizon wireless went out because I live kind of in a dip on Old Morris Hill. But now, are you suggesting that my Verizon wireless goes out because the spectrum signal I didn't.
You're probably right. If you go down into a dip, sometimes
Yeah,
it's hard for
lower
the
the
signal to
phone,
reach
The
down.
signal goes out.
What's the probability that if I live on a road that I know you have to fiber down that road to reach some of the houses there, thing doesn't ring, what's the probability that you're on fiber to me if you're running right now?
Pretty good. Okay, pretty good. The only caveat that I will make is if you're live along a highway, right? And you see the lines going down one side, but you're across the highway on the other side, that's pretty hard to get to. The other thing is if you're, it has to be the right kind of transmission line that is running past an emergency. So if you think of it as like just a regular road network, right? Like you can't get off of an 8-lane highway onto a one-way street going the wrong direction, right? Like just because it's over there, running alongside the highway, you actually have to get on the off ramp and then go to an access road and, you know, and then it works just the same. So like we could have a big, you know, transmission fiber going down the road, but it's not the fiber that's needed to provide service to an end user location. But I will tell you that when we look at these projects, whether it's a grant funded project or other project, we architect them so that we can capture as many homes as possible, right? I mean, we want to be efficient builders, we want to get as many people connected, we want to win customers. So, you know, we make every rational attempt to capture as many locations on a synergistic basis as we possibly can.
And you're the website to look up our address again?
So,
Come to this page,
Yeah,
this is the one,
okay,
that address right up there.
okay,
And we'll have under expansion information, we'll have.
okay.
All right, so we are at 6:40. I don't want, y'all don't have to go home.
but you can't stay here. Is
That's
that what they say?
Allison's gonna be here for a minute, but I don't want to hold everyone else captive, so if you have any questions for Allison or Commissioner Wells, or anyone, turn by, feel free. Otherwise, thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.